Imagine pitching your tent on the land you've owned for decades, only to have the sheriff show up and ask if you have permission to be there. That's not a joke. That actually happened to me, and what started as a peaceful weekend at my private lake turned into uncovering months of trespassing, unauthorized construction, and one HOA president who was about to regret underestimating me. Here's how it went down. If you love HOA Karen stories, like and subscribe for more videos like this. I've owned this ranch land since I was in my 30s. Bought it after I sold my small construction business, 40 acres, a freshwater lake, and total freedom. I built a dock, planted trees, added a little fire pit, and stocked the lake with bass every spring. It's not fancy, but it's mine. No neighbors, no nonsense, or so I thought. About 5 years ago, a subdivision got built about a half-mile north, HOA run with all the usual drama. At the time, I didn't worry. The property lines were clearly marked, and I kept to myself. But a few weeks back, I finally had a break in my schedule. Decided to spend 3 days off-grid. Packed my gear, my dog, and a cooler, and headed to the lake to unwind. Day one was perfect until just before sundown. I was sitting on a camp chair with a fishing rod in one hand and a cold beer in the other when I saw it, a man jogging, right along the edge of the lake like he was following a marked trail. He nodded at me like I was the outsider. At first, I figured he was just lost. But the next morning, two women with yoga mats walked right past my truck and unrolled them on the grass like it was their private retreat. One had a water bottle labeled HOA Wellness Walk Club. I stood up and asked, "What are you doing on my land?" The older one scoffed. "We've had access to this trail for months. The HOA maintains it." I said, "Not unless the HOA owns my lake, which they don't." They left in a huff, and I figured that was the end of it, until the sheriff rolled in with lights flashing. The sheriff didn't come aggressive, just confused. He stepped out of his SUV, took off his sunglasses, and said, "Sir, we got a call about someone illegally camping near the HOA trail system." I just blinked. "Sheriff, you're standing on my property." He hesitated. "Do you have proof of ownership on you?" I nodded, walked to my truck, and pulled out a laminated copy of the plat map I keep in my glove box, habit from dealing with boundary disputes over the years. I laid it across his hood, pointed at the lake, the dock, the trail, and finally the lot number tagged with my name. He looked it over, let out a slow whistle, and said, "Well, you're not the one trespassing." Then she showed up. Karen, mid-60s, sunglasses the size of saucers, driving a brand new Audi SUV that still had the dealership sticker. She stormed over with a clipboard in one hand and a smartphone in the other, already recording. "This is an HOA-maintained zone," she snapped. "He's been harassing our residents and squatting on open-access land." The sheriff raised an eyebrow. "You're saying this is HOA property?" She nodded, smug as anything. "Yes. It's part of the trail system outlined in our green space planning." I didn't say a word, just handed the sheriff my second document, the updated county GIS overlay with property lines. He looked from her to the paper. "Ma'am, this entire section belongs to Mr. Me. The trail cuts directly across his land. Did your HOA get an easement or legal agreement?" She froze. "Well, the developers told us. Did you file anything with the county?" He cut in. Karen's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Then I added, "They've built benches, a gravel trail, even a kayak rack, all on my land. I have drone footage, and I didn't approve any of it." Karen turned red. The sheriff folded his arms and said, "Ma'am, until this is sorted legally, I'm going to have to ask your HOA to stay off this land, immediately." Karen tried to push back, but the sheriff shut it down fast. "I won't have your group trespassing and then calling 911 on the actual property owner. This could become criminal fast." That's when I realized this wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was theft. And I was just getting started. After that sheriff left, Karen didn't come back, not at first, but her silence didn't fool me. I knew exactly how HOA types work. They stall, they lie, they bluff, so I stopped playing defense. First thing Monday, I drove straight to the county recorder's office. Got certified parcel maps, subdivision records, everything down to the original developer filings. Turns out, that trail system they bragged about was never legally mapped. It was just assumed access from the old builder, who had no authority to promise anything past the public boundary. Next, I hired a licensed land surveyor, told him to mark every inch of my property in bright orange flags. It took 2 full days, but by the end, my ranch looked like a construction site. Flags, stakes, fresh lines in the dirt, even some warning signage that read, "Private land, entry by permission only." I also called my attorney, someone who handles property encroachments for a living. He took one look at the drone footage of the HOA's trail cutting through my trees and said, "This is textbook trespass. And if they've installed anything permanent, even a bench, you've got them for civil damages." He wasn't kidding. They'd poured concrete footers for benches. They installed solar lighting. There was even a stone pathway leading from the HOA's cul-de-sac right into my backyard like it was a public park. So I filed a formal cease and desist, sent it certified to the HOA's legal address, addressed directly to the board president, Karen. The response? Nothing. No letter, no email. But I did notice something weird the next evening. A couple of HOA members with tape measures near the trail whispering. Then the benches mysteriously disappeared overnight. Solar lights, too. They were trying to erase the evidence before it hit court. Too late. Because my lawyer had already filed for damages, citing illegal land use, unauthorized construction, and thanks to the sheriff's report, false police reporting. This wasn't just a neighborly squabble anymore. It was a lawsuit. And I wasn't after an apology. I was after every dollar they wasted trespassing on land they didn't own. Karen thought this would go away. I was about to make sure it cost her everything. Court day finally came, and you better believe I showed up early. I wore boots, jeans, and a clean button-down. No fancy suit, just the guy who owned the land who got accused of trespassing on his own property. My attorney rolled in with binders, maps, drone footage, expert affidavits. We had receipts for everything. Karen, she walked in like she was headed to brunch. Hair done up, clipboard in hand, like she was still running a meeting. She didn't even bring a lawyer, just the HOA's legal counsel, who looked about 2 cups of coffee short of prepared. The judge reviewed the evidence quietly, then said, "Let me get this straight. The HOA built a trail, benches, lighting, and issued citations on land that never belonged to them?" Karen tried to interrupt. "Well, Your Honor, the homeowners have historically used that space as historically," the judge said flatly, "doesn't override a deeded boundary. Did you obtain written easement rights?" Karen blinked. We assumed assumption is not permission. That was it. The judge banged the gavel and ruled in my favor on every count. The HOA was ordered to pay $164,000 in damages for trespass, unauthorized land improvements, and depreciation of my land. Fully dismantle the entire trail within 30 days, no exceptions. Cover all my legal fees and compensate the sheriff's office for the false emergency call. And this was my favorite, publicly notify every resident of the legal violation and provide GPS-verified maps showing the real property lines from now on. Karen's face? Pale as drywall. A few of the board members behind her looked like they were about to faint. One even muttered, "She said we were fine." Yeah, not anymore. Word spread through the neighborhood fast. Within 2 weeks, Karen was voted off the board. The HOA reserve fund was drained, paying the judgment. They had to raise dues to cover the rest. Folks were furious. Several homeowners filed their own complaints demanding refunds for illegal improvements. As for me, I rebuilt the fencing, put up trail cameras, even held a family barbecue at the lake a few weeks later. On my land, no permits required. One neighbor drove by and muttered, "Didn't think you'd win." I just smiled. You should never bet against a man who knows what he owns. So remember, when the HOA tries to take what's yours, don't yell. Don't beg. Just bring facts and let the law do the yelling for you.